Hi everybody, welcome to Miss Parrott's video number 18. And it's hard to believe we're winding down, but here we are in June, and this will be not the last video. I might have a special little bonus video for you, but this is the last content video about the Reformation. And as you can see with your timebook page, that you need to have three options. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you with some information for the menu options today. And the first menu option, as you can see, is about how the Catholic Church was weakened. So first of all, you have to understand that in Western Europe, the Catholic Church dominated. It was the religion of the time period, and in the early 1500s through the 1600s, there started to be some reformers, people who were unhappy with how the Catholic Church was doing things. So our first image here is about how the Catholic Church was weakened. Some Catholics, they disliked the sale of indulgences, which released people from their sins. So basically, if you did good deeds, or you gave the church money, you did something in the church's favor, then they would forgive you for your sins, and basically, you know, you'd be buying your way to heaven. Also, there was the practice of simony, which was selling leadership positions. So not based on people's merit, but if people did certain favors or paid a certain amount of money, they could be in a leadership position, and that made Catholics angry as well. Through this, obviously, if you're selling indulgences and you're selling these leadership positions, the Catholic Church was getting very wealthy. And the monarchs at this time were struggling with the Pope for power. So that created a weakness, because there's a lot of energy spent in fighting the kings. And then also the Western Schism lowered the amount of respect people had for the papacy. So, which means, you know, people didn't respect the Pope because there was this conflict, and because you now have Eastern Europe is broken off from Catholicism, and they are in Eastern Orthodox part of Christianity. So that showed weakness on the part of the Pope. So that is your first menu option. Your second menu option talks about making sure you understand that there were a number of reformers who were unhappy, and they decided to do something about it. And this image shows kind of like a matching sort of image, but it shows some vocabulary, but it also shows a number of people. In particular, John Wycliffe was an early reformer, and it might not seem like a big deal to translate the Bible from Latin to English, but it shows that it is going against what the Pope would want, and it's making it more accessible to a wider audience, not just the people who can afford education and the nobility. Jan Hus is someone who was a reformer and burned at the stake for their crimes against the church. So this shows just how serious the church's leaders were about making sure to have the reformers be silenced. You also have Catherine, who was declared a saint by the Catholic Church, but she also spoke against the Catholic Church as well. And then you have Erasmus, who kind of, it says, laid the egg for Martin Luther, kind of paved the way for Martin Luther and his later reforms. So I'm not going to go into detail about each reformer, but if you look in the first Reformation chapter that is attached to Google Classroom, you will see there is a good chunk of information for each of the people I just talked about, as well as a few more. So I would say choose one that you interests you, and you can write about what they did to change the church's ways. So one of these people in particular, Martin Luther, he was very upset by the Catholic Church, and he believed that it was possible, actually impossible, to earn salvation because it was a gift from God. And so he posted his 95 Theses, which are basically his beliefs about how the church should be run and what was wrong with the Catholic Church. And you can see in this image here that he started his own religion, Lutheranism, and there were three big principles of Lutheranism, and this actually runs over into your next option to talk about Lutheranism, Calvinism, and Anglicanism. So with Lutheranism, you can see that they had three, and actually many beliefs, but these were some core principles, that baptism and communion were the only two sacraments, which was very different from Catholicism, who had 7 sacraments. Christians could do nothing to earn their salvation, so there's no selling of indulgences. You can't buy your way into salvation. And then reading the Bible was the only way to gain faith in God. So you can't earn your faith in God by doing favors for the church's leadership. So that is a little bit about Martin Luther. And for your chart, if you're doing the next menu option about Lutheranism, Calvinism, and Anglicanism, this one is about Calvinism. And the 3 big things about, based on John Calvin and his leadership, his reforms, he believed, and the Calvinist theory was government was run by religious leaders. Families had to live under very strict Calvinist laws, and all laws were based on the Bible. So you can see that there wasn't this, we've talked about the word secular before, and a separation of what is not religious and what is religious. And you can see that with Calvinism, they really believed that religion was an integral part of everyday life. So that will help you with the Calvinism part of that chart. And then this image here shows some basic principles of Anglicans and the Anglican Church. So this would be the last part of the chart. So you have the founder of the Anglican Church was King Henry VIII, and remember he was one of those monarchs who had conflicts with the Pope, and he wanted to do his own thing, so he started his own church. And you can see some of the, I'm not going to go through all of the terms here, but these are, some things you can look at when you are reading about the Anglicans in that first chapter attached to Google Classroom. Okay? So now, obviously, you can probably tell that the Catholic leaders weren't going to just sit this one out and, let the reformers do their thing. You can see in this image that there was a Counter-Reformation. And so this whole response to Reform and Protestantism was called the Counter-Reformation. And you can see here's a picture here of Catholic leaders coming together and at the Council of Trent, and they established a Jesuit order, and this became kind of the Catholics' response to spreading Catholicism through missionaries, through education, and trying to make Catholicism stronger in Europe and beyond. Also, during this time, unfortunately, they established the Inquisition to fight the spread of Protestantism. So this was not pleasant. It involved torture of people and trying to get them to reform back to Catholicism and trying to root out all of the Protestants and either convert them back to Catholicism or, do some not so pleasant things to them. So this was the Counter-Reformation, and this is part of the last option on your time book. And that last option also asks about what about the spread of so how did this affect, why is this an important part of history? How did this affect Europe at that time, and not just Europe, but the world? So if you look at this image, there's four main ways that the Reformation affected the world. One is that it kind of brought nationalism throughout Europe. So basically this feeling of, okay, we're all the same, and trying to, this is how we identify with ourselves is through these religions and through this, through being European. So it wasn't, the fights between the city-states or through the countries. It was all like, we are all these things together. It also has the religious boundaries that we have today. So, there are the religions that we've talked about. They have lasted with us today. It led to the fighting of the 30 Years' War. Just keep in mind that, and I'm sure you've talked about this in your other classes, that wars are over power, over land, over religion, over resources, and that is no exception. And then it strengthened the power of the monarchies across Europe. So the kings also had more power because they could see that they could fight against the church. So that is a really brief little overview for you, but the two chapters that are attached in Google Classroom will help you. And if you have any questions, just email me, let me know. So we are going to have office hours one more time tomorrow. So if you have any questions about the VELT or with the time book, coming to the office hours will help, because everything is due on Friday, June 5th, and all late work final day is June 8th. So hope everyone's doing well, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.